Alright, so hopefully everything still works here since I haven't used that setup in a little while. And yeah, we're back to Incus OS and kind of weekly live streams now. Next week's gonna be an Incus release. Um, just a bit of warning, I'm expecting a lot of deliveries today, so I may need to step away at some point to deal with that. Also, I've got contractors working on completely redoing my second building on the property. That will eventually become my office and server room, and I think that's why you might see some of my lights flickering every so often. That's most likely because of hydro, like pre-hydro equipment, just causing some bumpiness on the power here. I do have a house-wide UPS that's supposed to take over, but so far the power hasn't been dodgy enough for that to trigger. So I'm just getting, yeah, a bunch of kind of flickering weirdness instead, which is not great, but hopefully the servers are handling it better than the lights, and I don't get a cut that actually kicks me offline. All right, so Incus OS, and I did see Jared's question about last week. So I wasn't live streaming last week because I was at NorthSec, which is a cybersecurity conference organized every year in Montreal. I'm the VP of infrastructure. It's a pretty large nonprofit with like 90 staff, I think, at this point. And it's running an event of, I think we had about 1,200 people total or something like that across during the week. But I'm basically in Montreal for that week, doing everything from setting up the core network infrastructure. So we have our own fiber network in the building with 20 gigabit of network per room. We've got a bunch of switches in every room, like redundant switches using MikroTik switches. And then a whole bunch of Wi-Fi access points, typically around a dozen per room. And we've got 3 large rooms that we're setting up like that. And then for the actual uplink, we've got a 10 gigabit link directly to the data center that I've got my servers at. So we use that for the uplink. And then on site, we've got a small router that handles all of the cross VLAN traffic for all of the AV stuff, all of the participants, all that stuff, and then the uplink to the data center. So that server was the first production deployment of Incus OS. So that's why it's kind of relevant to this live stream. That server was actually running Incus OS stable release and ran it perfectly fine for a week to the point where we didn't really need to interact with Incus OS itself at all. We just got to, run Incus VMs and containers on top of it and mostly ignore it, which is exactly what we want to see. So that was that. And yeah, hopefully I'm gonna get to run more and more stuff in production on Incus OS over the coming weeks. All right, that actually reminds me I was checking on a remote server that was installing Incus OS just to get some feedback on that. So I'm checking that because it's at a customer site. I can't quite show you what I'm looking at, but I just wanted to see what happened because that's like an actual production grade server that we're trying to automate. So automating, setting up secure boot, TPM, going through the install and making sure it works. And I keep hitting some interesting edge cases we didn't think of. The last one of which, apparently we hit it again for some reason, so going to figure out what's going on there. Was that the disk might not be completely blank, which then causes a failure on the boot after installation, because when systemd repart attempts to run, it fails, and then we never get a clean install. So anyway, I might just send, well, I'm gonna deal with that afterwards. I need to send that to Matthias to take a look at, because that's not good. Basically, we go through the install, then reboot. Let me check if the virtual media is still attached. That could be a problem. No, it's not. So virtual media is detached, machine is attempting to boot, and it's not really able to because it's somehow, well, I guess repart is not running correctly, and so the system is trying to hit install mode, which then fails because as it turns out, it's an installed system, not an install media. So anyway, I'm gonna figure that one out later. Now let's look at who actually went into Incus OS over the past couple of weeks, and there's quite a bit. So let's go to try to figure out roughly where we're at. So 2 weeks ago, that's roughly where we were at last time. I think the state stuff I did after the live stream. I don't remember doing that during. Yeah. Don't fail missing path, trigger handling, clear cache, and update. I don't actually remember exactly where we were at last time. It might have been around here. Update functions and the like. So basically what we did over the past few weeks has been a bunch of improvements on networks. Part of the idea is that we should be able to provision Incus OS on many systems using just one install media. So we want to, on identical systems anyways, we want to take the device name instead of the MAC address and then detect the MAC address on first run and then remember that going forward. So that's something that was added this week. We did a bunch of fixing around handling of VLANs on top of bridges, on top of bonds, like pretty complex network stuff. There was a bunch of issues, so fixed all of that. Also fixed the update handling for applications because it would actually apply the update but not restart the services, so I fixed that. There's also a manual update trigger now that we can call through the API. So that required the providers to clear their cache, so we'll be adding that as well. The route config for static routes was wrong, so fix that. Been tweaking the GitHub provider a bit to handle the throttling endpoints and like basically if you're hitting it too often then you get throttle on their side, and that was actually causing IncusOS to do even more queries that would get it even more throttled. So now it properly detects that and handles it. I've also added some logic to properly retry on missing network connection, so that's working a bit better than it used to. This one was getting stuck doing early manual updates. Okay, I'm not sure exactly what we fixed in this one, but yeah, I think it might have been some kind of loop where effectively if we don't have, oh yeah, I think I know what that was. If you don't have network access early on, for example, that NorthSec server is a bit of a weird case where the router is actually a container. So you need to let the machine fully boot, so the router goes online, and then the host system can update through it. So you needed a bit of tweaking there so that on boot, if there's no connectivity, it doesn't freak out and it still allows the applications to start so we can get that router up and running. So there was some amount of tweaking around that. Proper handling of like recording what the current release and the next release is. So that if we stage an update, as in like there's an update pending, it's downloaded, it's ready to go, we properly record that in the state. So if we need to do another check, like a manual check or something like that, we don't keep re-downloading the same update over and over again, because now we actually know that it's already been downloaded and ready to boot. So that was added there too. That's a bunch of the network cleanup I mentioned, like around MAC addresses, VLANs, and all that kind of stuff. There was also some tweaks to the text UI around modal messages. I don't remember what we did there exactly, but yeah, that's been improved. There's also now, if you're trying to install a machine with multiple disks and you've not specified which one, now it's going to tell you what other disks have been detected. That's pretty useful. Yesterday I actually ran into that issue with a server having a virtual floppy drive, and for some reason we were considering that as a valid install target, and therefore it was refusing the install because there was more than one disk it could install to. We're fixing that now to ignore virtual floppy drives, but that was useful to have the error to actually figure out what's going on. Then, does it one next or previous? I'm always gonna confuse, probably previous actually. There we go. Bunch more tweaks. So this one was very welcome. So instead of copying the entire EFI system partition, which is a 2 gigs large, I think, now we just copy the files. So it's significantly faster. We might try and do the same thing with the root partition, where we currently copy the full 1 gig, but we could, in theory, only copy the 250 or 300 megs of actual data that's in there. That would also improve install performance a fair bit. Doesn't really matter when installing on a fast machine with like a fast install media, but lately I've been doing installs over basically a VPN with a virtual media, and it's terribly slow. Like it takes about an hour and a half to do an install. So if I can, cut half an hour out of that by not copying zeros, that'd be nice. A few more tweaks that were needed for physical servers. We're missing some USB keyboard and mice, that kind of stuff. So we've added some things to better handle physical machines. Same issue with the remote server being insanely slow. We actually had the issue that the CD-ROM would be detected too late and we wouldn't be able to mount it. So we had to fix that a bit by changing from a systemd rule to a udev rule to handle the CD-ROMs, and also bumping all systemd timeouts from 1:30 to 3 minutes, because it literally takes 2 minutes on that remote machine to notice it's even got a CD-ROM inserted. It's that slow at reading from the virtual media. A few more tweaks. We had some issues with boot entries not always being there, so we're now always injecting one with bootctl install at the end of the installation. More tweaks on MAC addresses, more tweaks on networking, even more tweaks on networking. So there's been some tweaks to what's considered to be online now, so we've had to do a few changes there. So timeout for network config to apply. We're also looking at adding a reverter for the network config. So if you push a network config that's invalid for some, well, not invalid, but that's valid, but doesn't give you connectivity on apply, it would auto revert, just to avoid people getting completely cut off from their servers. So we're looking at adding that. A few more tweaks for what's considered to be offline, what's considered to not having any update. More network config, still kind of reshuffling things. And then, okay, so that was yesterday, I think. So I fixed Incus OS to use the new native certificate handling from Incus, so we don't need to have that custom code there anymore. It also automatically retries the connection on GitHub, which is useful for me since I don't run on IPv4 here. It gets on IPv4 very quickly. It thinks it's got connectivity. It tries to connect to GitHub. That fails because you need to wait for IPv6 to be fully operational for that, and then it will just fail the boot. Now it's gonna retry it for up to 5 seconds. IPv6 comes online, everything works fine. So that was a tweak there. And then some tweaks to the text UI are the last things we merged. Mostly handling like multiple modal pop-ups. So if we need to log both like an update happening and then something else with a progress bar, it will now rotate from one message to the next instead of both of them fighting to draw on the screen at the same time. A few more tweaks to the text UI as well to not show the fetch the encryption key type message during install, because it's not really relevant. And also tweaking the coloring of the output to make it easier to know what's the message, what's the extra context. So that's basically where we're at. And we've got an open pull request for some more fixes that I haven't reviewed yet. Probably some of the stuff I mentioned. Yeah, don't consider RAM disk or floppy devices. Before starting the install, run block discard to wipe the disk. Handle partially wiped disk that don't have a main GPT table. Check if secure boot is enabled. When system requirements, check fails. Don't enter a tight startup loop. Okay, that might actually help with the server I'm currently debugging. So I'm just gonna do a quick review on that. So it excludes specific types. Okay, that should be fine. Don't think RAM disks are very likely, but yeah, the floppy drive was interesting. Before starting the install, run block discard to wipe the target disk. Okay, so we're doing that instead of zapping the partition table. Okay. And we don't do that on the force install, so that's kind of odd. Okay, let's just leave a message there. Okay, that should do it. Let's leave that comment in there. What's the next fix? Handle partially wiped disk that don't have a main GPT table. Okay, so that's checks with SG disk. Okay, and otherwise it forces the install on it. Okay, I'm slightly confused. I guess I don't remember where we called the perform install from. Just trying to figure out if is this actually safe or if we might be risking wiping a disk we don't want to wipe. It's gonna get the entire file. The perform install. Okay, there. Perform install target device. Get target device. New install something. I mean, there's a should perform install check, which maybe performing the check we want. Should perform install. No, that doesn't really help us. Okay. Oh, I guess the point, okay, yeah, I guess that makes sense actually. So the point is we are told to look at the disk. Normally we would check if it's got a valid partition table. And then if it does, we're gonna be checking whether we've been asked to force it. If we've not, then we say that like, sorry, there's something on this disk. The point here is that if the disk doesn't have a main GPT table but has a backup table for some reason, we don't really want to deal with that, and we should just consider it to be to actually be fine, because the user probably cleared the beginning of the disk with something like DD, forgot to clear the end part of the disk, but they clearly meant for that to be gone. So that actually makes sense. This commit is fine. And then check if secure boot is enabled. So we're doing that pretty early on. So that's in the early checks, because we've had that problem too with some systems. Having secure boot kind of get reset underneath us, and that was causing some weirdness. Okay, system requirements chill, don't enter a tight startup loop. Okay, so we just basically keep the warning displayed when we hit a system requirement failure. Okay, that makes sense. All right, so there's just that one thing I commented on that probably needs tweaking, and the rest is good. All right, so let's just build the current Incus OS and see how that works. And then we can play a bit with adding an extra provider, which is the point of this live stream. All right, so Incus OS, pulling what's in main. I think I'm already up to date. Yes. And I can go ahead and just build this. There we go. While it's building, I was just gonna text Matthias or Toya, just open Teams here. basically texting Matthias to describe the issue I've been running on the production server with repart apparently failing on boot post-install, which then causes Incus OS to think it needs to begin installing, but it's not actually booted from an install media, but from the installed system, and then gets all kind of confused. And because this is a production image with the OS community read-only on physical hardware, we can't easily access it to go see what's going on behind the scenes. So I was asking if he's got what might be going on, and that we should probably detect this particular scenario, basically booting from writable media that failed repart that doesn't have an install seed, which then means we actually booted from the install system, but one that's not working. And in that scenario, we should probably try and like print the systemd journal or something so we can figure out what's going on. So hopefully we can do something on that and see what's happening with that server, because I'm starting to run out of ideas. That particular server we're dealing with, we actually did get a few clean installs working properly, but for the past couple of days, haven't been able to. And the same builds work perfectly fine locally, so that suggests to me that there's nothing wrong with the image itself necessarily. So it's probably something wrong with the server state, which is why we've added some logic to like do block discard to wipe the disk and some of that kind of stuff, but that doesn't seem to be helping. So not sure why systemd repart is failing on that box. Like normally the answer for VM is it's got less than 50 gigs of storage. That particular server, it has like a terabyte, so that's not the issue. I was thinking it might be a partition conflict with a former partition. So like when we recreate the partition table, because it lines up perfectly, it now finds partition signatures and it freaks out. But the disk-wide block discard should have taken care of that, and apparently it didn't. So pretty confused as to what's going on that machine, actually. Hopefully I can figure it out soon. It's just a bit frustrating because it's a remote server with some bandwidth issues with going to its BMC. So an install, as I mentioned earlier, takes about an hour and a half. Not to mention that I need to flip back and forth inside of the BIOS to turn on Secure Boot, remove it, and all that kind of stuff. So it easily takes me 2 or 3 hours to test anything on there, which is really not very pleasant. Anyway, we should have a Incus OS image built here very soon that we can install and boot up to just show some of the smaller improvements we've done. Mostly you're gonna see the OSD tweaks, slightly more readable log messages. Once that's done, we're gonna go and poke at the provider API. So, okay, it finished building. Let's just test it. Need to shrink the terminal a bit for that. That's probably going to be fine. And yeah, the idea is to start integrating with Operation Center, which we still haven't published on GitHub. We're probably getting close to that. We've been redesigning some of the APIs, especially around update management. So looking at, but like, it's still open source, it's just not public yet. So I don't really have any problems integrating with it or even showing some of the source code if we need to. And it's got an API we can already poke at, so writing a very minimal provider for that. And then once the new final API kind of lands, we can tweak that. Okay, so the install just happened very, very quickly, as you can tell. And now we're doing the reboot on the installed system. I don't remember when I last did a live stream if we had already tweaked the verboseness of some of those messages. But now we should just what's kind of essential. We used to show a lot more messages. Now we're doing correct log levels, and we only show info and above, I think, in the actual system. So here we can see starting up. It thinks it's in production mode. That's fine. That's just the way my system works. Here, breaking up the network, and then it fails to fetch the update simply because there's no matching update on GitHub. So it was actually a small, so it's good to see the message working, but I need to actually just tweak this. Basically, I'm set up locally to build production looking images, which helps with debugging. But in this case, I forgot to add a small tweak to actually fake the GitHub version. What's the actual version string on it? It's 20, 25, 05, 21, 21, 31. That's, did I typo anything? 2025, 05, 21, 21, 31. That seems correct. Okay. Right, so we can get rid of this. Just do a new build, and that build's gonna have the correct version string. Actually, I need to cancel that and clean my environment so that we don't have anything in macOS side output, and then run the build again. Okay, while that's going on, because that's kind of boring to look at, let's see. Yeah, there's a question of whether it's based on Debian. Yeah, it is. So it's a completely immutable OS that's currently based on Debian 13. The actual distro we use doesn't really matter because you never get a shell on it anyways. But yeah, the base distro is Debian 13 because that's what we're most familiar with anyways. Okay, my VPN is up, so that's good. So I should be able to do operations center ffcdev.net. Yes, that works. Is it trying to remember the API? If it's 1.0 provisioning update, something like that. Forbidden. That doesn't look right. Is it 1.0 updates? Nope. Let me just check in my logs what that normally needs to look like. Okay, API stuff. Come on. Just going through my back scroll with Lucas was the upstream for Operation Center. Just want to see what I'm missing. Because I remember getting that working quite well. Oh, there we go. That looks like valid output. 1.0. Yes, it's the current endpoint. 1.0 provisioning updates. Now, last time I did that, it was not returning a 403. So that is new. Okay. Let's see what happened. Oh, do I have a Operation Center here? I do not. Okay. Let's fix that. I don't know when it was last updated. My guess is that authentication was added since last time I played with it, and that particular endpoint was not configured to bypass it. So, let's see, can I build this thing? Okay, looks like we're building the client, which is, I don't care too much about right now. It's mostly the server I'd like. Oh, really building the client for everything first. Windows. This it gets faster the second time you run it. This question on the base file system for Incus OS. No, it's so the image itself, so /user in the image is EROFS, which is a read-only file system that we sign and that you can't modify. And then the writable storage is ext4 encrypted using LUKS. And then for additional instance storage, we're using ZFS based, also encrypted using the same key. So that's what we've got in there. Okay, so this is built. Now we've got Operation Center D. Let's push that guy over to the right remote. FFDEV there. Let's push bin Operations Center D to Operations Center. I guess it's probably use a local bin, maybe. Yeah, that's the right location because the file is busy. Okay. let's just push it to /user then, and go in there, remote dev, operations center. I was running it from a screen session, I think. No, okay, I've got a systemd unit then. Operations center, let's stop that. Move the new binary. And then start it back up, just to make sure we've got something clean, which now promptly failed because of database. Sweet. Okay. And it's work in progress if you've not figured it out already. I suspect simply the database probably needs to get destroyed and recreated. What worries me is that the database now may not be containing any of the updates. So let me see. All right, so that's no longer failing. So access control is fine, but we don't have any actual updates, so that's not good. Just checking if the rest of the API is authenticated. Yeah, forbidden, but an updates is authenticated. Okay, so that's working. The main issue is it's not like there's no actual update to fetch right now. Let me check, because that literally changed this week. And we kind of want updates to be exposed if we, want to be able to fetch anything from it. So is there any logic remaining that's GitHub in there? Well, that's not helpful, is it? Google/go GitHub, I think, is the package. Yeah, there we go. So there is a thing called GH client that's loaded in updates. So that's good. Okay. So it still has logic here for updates. Now, the question is that being used for anything? Because we're not getting an update when we query the endpoint, so that doesn't look super good. Otherwise, what I might do is just bring the repo back in time to when I tested it, and then use that instead. There's a question around web UI and whether we'll have a UI that's not the LXD UI. Probably eventually. There's definitely interest for Feature Fusion to build its own Incus UI, which would then be obviously available open source to everyone and would probably start replacing the LXD UI as the go-to UI. But that's a lot of work, and we've got other priorities first. But that would probably be the direction. Like the general design of LXD UI is fine. Like it's JavaScript only, client side, drives the different APIs directly. That's exactly what we want for an Incus UI. Now the actual design of it, like the user experience and what features are being more prominently shown, that we might not necessarily agree on and might have some different views on how to do that. So yeah, that we might end up having a different UI that will eventually replace like the UI as kind of the go-to, but we're still quite a bit away from that. Instead, we've just been putting efforts in tweaking the Incus UI fork of LXD UI. So we've added some features that were missing, we've tweaked, removed a bunch of stuff, done some cleanup, fixed a bunch of bugs. We've done that instead. Just trying to figure out. So there's a bunch of scripts. Okay, just linting. Okay, that's not very helpful. I should probably have given a heads up to Lucas that I was going to be looking at this stuff today. Okay, so there is in the CLI has a client update type command. So maybe I should be using that. Let's transfer the client binary over then and see if that can do anything useful for us. Operations center, root. Seriously? File push, okay. Missing that, there we go. And now on the actual server, if I run the client, what can I see? Okay, there's a provisioning command. Invalid value for conf key auth type. Okay. But I'm local, so Unix socket will be the auth type. Kind of confused by that one, but okay. Anyway, yeah, provisioning has an update endpoint. So what's in there? Okay, you can add an update list file, sure, okay, but I just would like it to put from GitHub right now. Okay, well, anyways, this one finished building, so we can actually do a new test of the VM booting up. And then I might just try and bring us back in time in the Operation Center repo to when the GitHub endpoint was working. Then we can start doing an integration against that. And then that will get updated once we have updates loaded again on the current Operation Center. As I said, I should have given a heads up to Lucas that I was going to be playing with that today. Just so that he could make sure the server had some stuff on it. But hey, what would be the fun? So install's going through. The screen is a bit messed up just because I only resized it a bit late. We do a full redraw every minute, I think, but obviously the install takes like less than a minute, so they don't get to do that. This boot should be cleaned, huh? There we go. And because it's gonna think it's production and lines up with the current production build, we should see it actually downloading Incus and start it. And that's also an IPv6 only environment, so that tests that extra complexity as well. Okay, so it shows production mode, release, lines up with what's on GitHub, I think. Bringing up network, and there we go, downloading Incus. So now Incus is getting downloaded, installed, initializing, there we go, and we're done. Okay. So that's your Incus OS like fully running. Obviously, encryption key has not been recovered. That's fine. Could do that if we wanted to. We've tweaked the output a bit for IP addresses, so it's easier to deal with multiple physical network cards as well. Anyways, so that's working fine. Now, if only we could have it not talk to GitHub and talk to Operation Center instead. So let's see if we can make that happen. As I said, easiest option is likely gonna be to go significantly back in time to when I last played with it, which was, looks like April 10th-ish. So quite significantly back in time. Let's do that. I mean, I can probably be a bit more selective and just check when we started reworking updates. And can I just do it before that? I think that was over the past couple of weeks. Yeah, so here we've got database updates already, so that's not old enough. DB schema, add updates, so that's around that time. Let's go back just a bit. Right. Alright, here we go. Allow an authenticator access to updates. So we cannot need that one, that was the issue. But we don't want anything else. So if I go to this point in time, we should be good. Let's try that. Okay, so that's built. Now let's push the binary over. There we go. And on the server side, we're gonna need to stop the daemon, delete the database again, move the binary over, and then start it back up and see what it does. It is running, good. Now provisioning updates. Here we go, we've got GitHub updates being proxied through. That's not our final API, that's why the new code exists, but that will let us test what we want for today. So basically it shows us a list of updates, and then we can figure out whichever is the, how does that stuff work? It's the release ID, I think. So we can figure out whichever one is the highest of the list, which would be this guy. And then we can go and query that instead, which gets us the version string. And then underneath that, we should have a file list. There we go. And the file list has the URL of the actual files. That I think we also proxy that. So if I try say files slash file name, so incus.raw, does that give me the file? It gives me the file. There we go. Okay, so that's working fine for that was our very first draft of the update API for Operation Center. So we can implement a very basic provider for this, which can then evolve to support the newer logic, which allows the user to effectively run Operation Center in a completely offline mode and do manual file uploads for the updates. But anyway, that's good for now. So let's go play with the Incus OS, the code base. What we have in there, if I go here, internal providers. So we have already a local and a GitHub provider that exists. So we're gonna need, probably gonna fork the GitHub one into Operation Center. Something like that. Then go in there. We don't need to import this guy anymore. And then anything that says GitHub should say Operations Center. And anything that says capitalized GitHub should say Operation Center. Like so. Here we go. Okay. So that's just for the boilerplate. Okay. Just checking all of those. It looks like they're all comments, so I should probably have replaced with a space, but anyways. Okay, so can I got the basics in place now. Release last check, that probably still makes sense. Version is fine. Release assets, that's gonna be a bit different now. Actually, it makes me think that the local provider is a bit closer to what we want in this scenario. Release assets was just a list of strings. Okay. So, yeah, I guess for now we can just make this a list of string. We'll tweak it later. So that's the last check. That's the type. This would probably look better like so. Actually, let's put a dash. There we go, version center. Get OS update. So check release is the first thing we're gonna need to deal with. And the other thing that we're currently missing is we're gonna need an extra piece of seed data to configure what provider we want to use and the general config for that. So we should be able to say, I want Operation Center, and then for Operation Center, here's my config. So I would like this URL. I want to use this token for initial trust. I want to use this update channel, like I want to use stable updates or something like that. We don't have that yet. For now, I'm just gonna try and mock the basics of that provider, and we'll just hard code it into Incus OSD as the provider of choice for now, and flip that basically as later once the seed logic is in place. So in here, we've got that GitHub object, we don't need it. Organization and repository, we don't really need that. But we should, like, we're gonna need a server URL and eventually a server token. That a token we won't really implement today. It's not needed right now. Something along those lines. What was in config? I don't remember what config was. Doesn't look very used, does it? Okay, well, I can go away. So during load, we need to initialize the thing. So we'll just wipe that, and then server URL will be our development server. So it's operations center.ffcdev.net. Anyone trying to access that, you're not gonna be able to. You need a VPN to access it, but there you go. Server token. We'll just put test foo bar. We're not gonna actually use it for now, but as soon as we do, we're gonna be able to check that value on the server side. Check limit, not a thing, can remove that. Try get release is also not gonna be a thing, so that can go away. And then Okay, so check release is the first thing we need to do. So the first thing, it checks whether we've done a check within the past hour. That still makes sense. We should have that in place. Get the latest release. So there we need to actually get a HTTP client, and we need to do some basic REST queries to the target server to actually get those details. I think the easiest there might just be to do a new standalone code base for now that gets the details we need, and then slot that into the actual daemon code, so we don't need to keep spinning new versions of the daemon to test it. So I can just do a test repo, go mod init, okay, and just do main.go, package main. We're gonna need an HTTP client, and we're gonna need a JSON parser here, and then main function. Then I usually do a do function that can return an error. That just makes it a bit easier. Then this one can be needs OS. We're probably gonna need format as well. Okay, so in here we just call do, and if error is not null, then we do print the error. Little something like that, and then we exit. Oops, we exit one here. Okay, so create HTTP client. I don't remember if we've got any logic for that already in Incus OS. I don't think so. So anyway, the general logic here is the client, and it's HTTP client, something along those lines. Just doing some quick lookup in documentation for the usual recommendations. Like we could do an HTTP GET directly. I think having a client will let us deal with timeouts and that kind of stuff a bit easier. Let's just try a basic query. So can we do client.get? Does that work? Operations center dot. Actually, let's do server URL. So that we've got the variables closer to what we have in the actual code base. Okay, so actually we don't, it's a fixed prefix, so we can do something on that. Slash 1.0 provisioning updates. Okay. Something like this. REST body. Actually, no. Content error. IO read all of REST body. We need to close the body. Oops, good catch. Okay, so it should give us the content, and then something kind of like that. Let's see how wrong I am with that piece of code. Probably pretty wrong, but it's missing. Okay, so we're missing IO. And I've got an OS in all caps somehow. That should be lowercase. Wow, that was surprisingly not wrong. Okay. Cool. So we're getting that response. It's technically an Incus style API response. I wonder if we've got a unwrapper type thing we can just use for that inside of the Incus shared API package. That would be very convenient. So let's see, shared API response. How does that work? So we've got response raw, which is probably what we got there. Response by 1000 map, separation. Like, I don't need much, honestly, from the response, so I could probably get that pretty easily. So yeah, type thing, status success, which would line up with type, status code. Operation is empty, error code, error. So that lines up with this mostly. And that gives me an UNI for the metadata, which is not the most convenient. And for normal response, so type response, okay, status. So I won't be able to unpack it inside of a response instead, which I can then do metadata as a map, if that makes sense. Now, in this case, it doesn't. In this case, it's a list of strings. Does it do recursion, though? I didn't check that. Let's see. I don't remember if it does. If we do recursion 1. Oops, should actually build it. Yep, that works. Cool. Okay, so if I do that, then it's a list of structs, which saved me a bit of a few queries. So that's cool. Okay, can try and do that. So here I should do. I actually want to probably the raw response makes sense, I think. Then we can cast it to the correct type and we should be fine. So let's import the Incus API in here. So releases, let's mark it. Well, actually, this is the response. This is us reading the thing. API REST, let's call it something like that. So I want that to be a pointer to an API response, something like that. And then I should be able to do JSON and Marshall of this content into API RESP. Assuming this doesn't fail. Here I should have a slightly more structured response I can print. What are we missing? Oh, right. Go get. There's a question about what Operation Center is. Yeah, it's an extra component that's developed by Future Fusion. It's Apache 2 as well. It's gonna show up on GitHub soon enough. It's and yeah, it lets you manage multiple clusters effectively. So in this case, what it does is provisioning. So if you use IncusOS large scale, so not just like in a home lab, you can point them all to an operation center, and then the operation center will manage all of the updates centrally, will know about all the servers, and will handle provisioning, as in assembling clusters for you, and then managing inventory from that point on. Okay, now I do need my encoding here. And let's see what that looks like. Yeah, okay, that's fun. But that's worked. It actually passed it. We can see type is synchronous, status code is 200, and then metadata is a big blob of stuff. Okay, so what's the, and which one did I use? I used response, I think. Yeah, I used response. Okay, so normally response as the response has map stuff. We don't really want that. Metadata abstract. Yeah, we don't really want that either. Metadata as string slice. Okay, but oh no, in our case it's not a string slice. Okay, so we might need metadata as struct actually. Just need to set up the right structs. All right, so what does that look like? So we want type. There's a question around Pixie provisioning as well. No, we're not gonna do that. Instead, what Operation Center does, it lets you download a pre-made ISO that will auto-install and connect to it. And then you can upload that whichever way is convenient. Most servers these days, they have a Redfish REST API that you can use to do that kind of thing. You can effectively upload an ISO to the server and then tell it, please boot on this once. So unlike Pixie, we don't need to manage DHCP, DHCP, TFTP, all that kind of stuff. You can have servers even deploy with static IPs, and you effectively just attach a virtual media that's customized for the server. It goes through the install and then it's done. So let's do type update. Let's just do some fanart. Come on, I can't type today somehow. Okay. All right. So for an update, and if the repo was public, we could just pull the API struct, but it's not yet. So we're gonna have to just wrap around it. And there's another question around home labs. Home labs are not really out of the picture for, I mean, definitely not for IncusOS. IncusOS is perfectly fine in the home lab. You don't need to use Operation Center. And even for Operation Center, you could run it in the home lab. You can run an Operation Center. You can download an ISO or USB stick, install media from that, and then boot it on your machines, and they will register for Operation Center. It's not necessarily going to be super useful in a home lab because Operation Center is particularly useful once you have multiple clusters to manage cross-cluster inventory. Unless your home lab is huge, you're likely to have one cluster, not 50. But to play around with it should still be perfectly fine. Okay, I did have that curl output from earlier. Where was that? Was it in here? Yeah, okay. I just need to look at what the struct looks like. So if I do this and I type it in JQ, and this is what we want as far as the fields. So we need an ID. That's just that's a string JSON type ID. It's fine. Components. I'm not sure why this is a string. It should be a list, but for now, I mean, we don't actually need it, so let's ignore that. I need the ID. I need the version, so that I do need. Like, we don't need to pass fields that we don't need, so let's just keep it simple. And that's basically all we need. Okay. And then we're gonna need the files as well. So for that, again, curl on the, I need to get one of the updates, doesn't matter which, let's take this guy. And files. Oops, missing a slash here. Okay. All right, so that's the files output. We need that. It doesn't really know much around file types and stuff, so it's actually unfortunate, but again, this is an old API. I'm pretty sure the current API supports all of that stuff. So for this one, we need basically just a file name. We might need the size, but I don't even think we really do. But anyway, it doesn't hurt to pull that one. Okay. So those are the new structs that we need. And now we can do updates. Oops. Updates, define it as a slice of update, and then can try to do the API resp dot, what was it, metadata as struct and then pass it the updates list. It returns an error, that's fine. And then if that passes correctly, we should have a updates list. Let's try that. Updates. Okay, I messed up on 921. What did I mess up? Oh, right. Okay. Empty. That seems wrong. What did I mess up now? Oh, no, it's a list. That should be fine. Did you want a pointer to that, really? Let's try that. I don't think it does. Oh, no. Okay, it did. Cool. All right, so now we've got our list of structs here. And, I mean, they're conveniently sorted, so we can do latest release. Well, first we should do a quick check. So if len of updates is 0, we should fail. Something along those lines. Okay. For good measure, we should probably also validate this response. So if API resp.type is not, come on, not sync, or API resp.error code is not 200, bad response, basically. Okay, is it status code instead of error code? Let's play status code. Yeah, that's fine, but it's string? That's weird. Let's go see. Response raw. I'm using a response. Response status code is an integer. Okay. Oh, yeah, okay. It's me being a dummy here. There we go. Okay, and then latest release was what I was adding. So that would be updates 0 dot version, I think. Latest release, it was 2025 05 21 21 31. That's correct. And then we need to go look. So let's get the latest release, and then we need to go get the file list. Okay, so we basically need, like, all this chunk here can go into a function, basically. So we should do that. So API request or something along those lines. We need a client, which is an HTTP client. Is HTTP client a struct or is that the interface? I don't remember. What's type client struct? Okay. So we should probably use a pointer to it. And then path as a string, and we just query that, and then the answer is a API.response as well as an error. Okay. So in this case, this turns into the path. We can move the server URL over to here for now. It passes the body into a thing, then it returns. Yeah, basically at this point we should be able to return. So return API resp and no. Okay, and then this guy would be no. This guy would be no. And this guy would be no. Okay. Just reshuffling the code a bit. And here we go. So now we can make it API RESP and what's called API request. Pass in the client and pass in the path that we want, which is 1.0 updates, recursion 1. Okay, so that should be that. And then pass the update list, get the latest release, and then we'll do the files. Okay, does that build? Probably not, huh? Line 54, what did I mess up? I forgot a null here. Okay. Yay, that builds. Does it work? Does not work. Invalid character P after top level value. Okay, where is that? Okay. I'm not sure what error is currently failing, so that's slightly annoying. Gonna do good old debugging by printf, so. It's probably one of those that's failing, so let's try that. 3, this guy. Unmarshal of content into API response. Okay. So I guess something is wrong with the body then. Operation center, FF. Oh, yeah, okay, never mind. I messed up the URL. So the URL doesn't exist and we're getting an error. So it's provisioning updates. There we go. Let's try it again. Yay! So that's working now for the file list. So for the file list, what we need is another API response and error. And we need to do an API request on the same client. And we want 1.0 provisioning, updates, and then we need the update ID. So it's updates 0.id. And then we need the files list from that. Okay, do the same logic as here. So basically making sure that no files need an update. Okay, I didn't get all of the parsing logic down. So this is get the update list, parse the update list, get the latest release, get the file list, and we're missing the parsing steps. So just need to get that chunk here into here, parse the file list. So this is a list of update file. Okay, and then we do that, and we finish with printing the files. Let's see. Update file not available. What did I call it? Oh, not sure why that's capitalized. It shouldn't be. Let's fix that. Okay, test. Yay, latest update and then our list of files. So that's good. And we can probably make it a bit cleaner. So we can printf of the list of files. the first one should be file.file name, and then the second will be the full URL for it. So that's the server URL is not defined in here. Never mind. We'll just show the size instead. It's mostly to just show we're getting the right data. So let's do that. Build. Oops, I forgot a line break. Build and run, and here we go. So now that we've got that, we can actually go and move that into the Incus OS code base itself to interact with the server. So let's go take a quick stab at doing that. So the first thing is that API request function can go over, so can get all of that across into, don't need that one anymore, there, into here. So there we go. Let's just clean up the code, and we're gonna put it directly on the struct. So that's on operations center struct API request. We don't need to pass the client because we should have that already, and then we just do the path. We don't need the server URL because we should have that already as well. Something along those lines. Okay. Response struct. Okay, so something kind of like that. We're gonna need to actually import the Incus client API. Here we go. I will just do a client, which is an http.client, which then we need to provision on load. So client, HTTP client, there we go, got that in place. API request should work now. And then we got check release. So get the latest release and then get the list of files. So that's exactly what we have. Now, what do we do for the list of files? I'm tempted to just keep the full URL to the files. That's probably the easiest for now, which then fits in the current schema up there. So let's do that. So anyway, first up is getting the latest release. So that's easy. We already have the code for that here. So update list and get the latest release. So that's that logic we need. Oops. That's logic we need here. Get the update list. So API request, that's not on the provider itself, so we can do this. We pass the endpoint, pass the update list. There we go, updates. Okay, that returns an error, that's fine. Here, and that's the latest release. Okay, so is it latest release it's called? No, release.version. Okay, and then release assets. Cool. So let's just fix that. Release version. Actually, we should just keep it within the function and then at the end flip it. That probably makes most sense. So this becomes latest release. And we'll do latest release 5 or something along those lines. Okay, can wipe this guy and then get our file list as well. Okay, like that. Get the file list. So again, that needs to change into p dot. This can go away here. Process errors, metadata struct, no files updates. Okay, fine. And then we've got the list of files. Oops. So list of files, we should do the test release files, make string 0 len of files. Okay. And then for each file, we basically go latest release files, append, and then we do server URL slash, actually I should be able to composite that one instead. So p server URL plus 1.0 provisioning updates latest release files file dot file name something else, and then that becomes latest release files, and we're good. I don't expect this to actually build because all the other functions are going to be all kind of messed up, but that function should be mostly happy. So we're missing JSON and update is not defined. Right, the structs are not defined yet. That's fine. So let's do encoding JSON. Here we go. Get the latest release here. Okay. So we just need to load up the structs in there. We don't need them to be globally scoped really, so that should be fine. Okay, it doesn't complain about that anymore, so that's good. So now for GetOS updates, it does check release and verify the list of assets. So normally it's used to getting an API client type thing. We're not getting that. Instead, we've got dot release files, I think it was called. No, it was release assets. Yeah, okay, so that still exists, just the asset type is different now. So file name is file path base of the asset. So if we need to check the file name, now we can. Okay, so that should be fine. Let's see if that function builds happily. 88 still has a get name. Okay, that's already the next function over. So for applications, check release again with the release assets, and we need the file name again here. So let's do that. Get this guy down here. Okay. So that gets us past that. Now we get on to 225, which is downloading the asset itself. It gets called with an asset ID. Where is it getting that from? Because it should just be past the asset itself, which is the URL at that point. And this is gonna need a file name. And this goes here. Okay. This is another case for file name. Basically, every time we do get name, we want to use the file name. Is there any other case of get name in here I should fix while I'm at it? Oops, not a function. Okay, and in this guy as well, file name. Okay, and no asset get ID, we just pass the asset itself. Okay, is there any other get IDs left in here? No. Okay, that might be a bit cleaner, so not 225, this is download stuff. So we basically need to just make an API, like a direct download with Go, so it's basically a p.client.get, and then we pass through the URL for it, which is just the asset being passed. So I should probably call it asset URL to be clearer, but do that. And that gets us a response as well as an error. So if we're getting an error, we should just return that. Check limit should just not exist in this code base anymore. Okay, it doesn't. Good. And then we defer, so instead of RC, it's resp.body that we close. And here should be the body instead. Here we go. How far off are we now? Pretty close. So this guy has a list of assets. That should be a list of strings. Okay, and 316 also has a list of assets. That also should be a list of strings. And it builds. Nice. So that's the most basic provider implemented yet, probably. Let's see how wrong things are based on static analysis. Quite wrong. Not too bad, but quite wrong. Okay, so yes, it's right. We should use HTTP status OK instead of 200, so that's good. Let's go fix that. All right. And then basically the rest of it is never used, which makes sense because we've not actually done any of the plumbing for it yet. So let's go do that. Internal providers load. And so we've got the GitHub case here and local. We should just add operation center. Okay, that's where the config fits in. It's just not used yet, but that's where it fits in. So I need to go back here and put the config stuff again, just so the load function doesn't fail. It's fine. That's better. Okay. Alright, so there's a bunch of errors related to context. So we should not use HTTP client get anymore because it lacks context. That's fine. Then which one has the context? Okay, it's do with a request. Okay. Does anyone have an example handy? That would be nice. No CTX. HTTP client get, because that would be convenient to just have the basic way to replace this thing. Okay, new request with context and do, yeah, okay. All right, let's do that. New request with context. So rec and error with HTTP new request with context. We pass a context in method HTTP.what method get, I guess, something like that. Then the actual URL we want, so that's this guy. And we don't pass in a reader because this is a get. So something along those lines. And then we do client do, and what does do take? Just the request. Okay, so something along those lines. Okay, it's complaining because the context doesn't exist. That's fine. I need to do a bit of plumbing. Hopefully all those functions already have a context being passed through. Okay, so that's fine. And then there's the other get, which is here. Okay, again, get, and it's just asset URL that we want to get. This one just returns an error, so there's no nil here. And then this takes do and the request. Okay. Alright, is static analysis happier? It is. Good. Just some formatting issue, which we can fix easily enough. Here we go, 0 errors. Look at that. That's nice. Okay, so now we've got a new provider basically implemented. What we need to do is actually test it. So I'm gonna want to check, did I have that server open somewhere? No. Remote FFC ffdev. Yeah. Just want to see if it logs every single API request. It looks like it does. So if I run that, yeah, we see the 2 API calls. Good. So we'll be able to check that we are actually hitting this thing with actual IncusOS. So that's good. Let's modify. So that's just a hack, but let's modify Incus OSD itself. We currently do provider GitHub here in case of production, so we're gonna do operations center instead. That's a hack, but that's fine. And then we push IncusOSD binary over to our test IncusOS VM. Here we go. And we go inside that VM. We overmount the IncusOS binary. And then we go and hunt it down and restart it. Okay. And we're boot looping, looks like. Yeah. Let's see what's going on. Error, unknown provider, operation center. Okay, so there's a hard-coded list that I missed somewhere. Let's look for local inside of IncusOSD internal. No. Yeah, there's a slice that we check. Okay, fine. All right. Okay, can unmount that, push the new one. overmount it, and see. I don't know if it auto restarted. Did not. Okay. Incus OS, start this thing up, and we're seeing API calls. Here we go. System is ready, so it noticed it's already up to date, so there's nothing to be done. But that's very good. Now, I don't think I've got VI, but I was gonna try and trick it to actually do a download. Let's do incus file edit test incus OS and then our state file, because I can pretend that the which one is it? So running release, next release, okay. I was gonna try and find the Incus app. Yeah, Incus app initialized. So let's pretend Incus is one version behind by tweaking the state and then restarting Incus OSD. And if we look at the journal, okay, so that failed. Downloading application, failed to check for application updates, invalid header, gzip invalid header. Okay. What happened? So access log, get update by file name, return an error, invalid release ID. Oh, right. Okay. Good. So there's an actual bug in the code. I know what it is. Let's go and deal with it. So when we build the file list, we're using the release ID, which I found was correct. Oh, that's for the file list. Okay, yeah. So the issue is later on here. Here it shouldn't be using latest release. It should still be using the release ID and then slash files. So that's the issue. All right, it's busy, so we need to unmount this guy. Then we can push it again. Hey, why aren't you letting me do that? Fine, push again. By mount, clear that log a bit, and then force restart 2661, and then journal. Downloading application, yay. So hopefully it's gonna download it. There we go. Bring in local storage. System is ready. So this time it did actually download from the image through the Operation Center Update API. So that effectively tested everything end to end, like every single HTTP calls we added have now been tested through that. So that's very good. That's basically everything I wanted to do right now. There's a bunch more cleanup to actually allow for setting a seed that tells the machine to use Operation Center instead of using GitHub. So there's still that part. But as far as having a initial provider for Operation Center, that's fine. The entire code in the providers folder is ready to go. So this whole chunk here, the rest are a bunch of hacks, but this is ready to go. Well, actually, no. This is still a hack, so that needs fixing. I need to actually get that from the config instead. Guess we could do that very quickly. That's easy. Let's do that. So if I did this and right. So we do have a config map that the user provides us. So that's what we're gonna get it from. So that's server URL. And this is server token. And then we're just gonna do some validation. We just want both of them to be set to something. So okay, so it's a bit less hackish now. Strings should not be capitalized. All right, yeah, I keep forgetting that we're trying to do errors the correct way in this code base. Fine. Okay. So the provider code is fine now. And just for kicks, if we build it, we should get the error at this point because we've obviously not passed the config in what's hard-coded. So if I push that in and I bind mount it, and then I restart Incus OS, the journal should show us an error. Yep. No operation center URL provided. So that's failing as expected. And then the there. Operation center. This one we currently always pass nil for config, so I should just do config, or actually provider config probably. Provider config. And the provider config, we can set it to this. And then I can do config server token and okay. Right, provider config. Oops. Provider config. Here we go. Make this stuff. Push exec in there. Put it in place. The binary shouldn't be running right now because it failed. Incus OS. Start it. System is ready, and it should have made some new API calls, maybe. Did I typo something? Oh yeah, I did. Okay. Operation center is gonna work better. Okay. Hey. All right. Here we go. So that's the cleaner version. Now I can actually push that code. Excuse me. Okay, operation center. Yeah. So we can literally commit that. I'm going to stash all this stuff. Switch to my own branch. Rebase onto main. Pop this stuff. Incus was the internal, and then providers. Something like that. There we go. Can push that and open a pull request. So now we've got this one open. And with that, that should be a wrap for this live stream. I didn't lose power, so that's good. And we got to poke at a slightly older operation center and write a provider for it. From this point on, I can expect Lucas, who's the upstream for operation center, to be able to quickly update that with any changes it needs. And we need to add the extra logic for the seed to actually make that code be reachable, because right now it's not. But other than that, it's the initial step for this stuff. All right. I'll leave you at that. Next week is gonna be an Incus release, so I won't do a live stream for that. But hopefully today was interesting, got through a bunch of stuff. And yeah, if you've got any questions around any of this, feel free to leave them down below or go on the community forum. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.